This new ZP3 preamplifier from Fosi Audio is amazing, but there is one thing, and it's kind of huge, that's an issue, so let's get into it. This is the brand new ZP3 preamplifier from Fosi Audio. It is the newest preamplifier and now their flagship as it fits into their Z line. I've been extremely excited to try this out, and we're going to take a deep dive into this because it is a balanced preamplifier with its XLR inputs and outputs, so it's actually unlocking some features on other devices that I have, which is why I wanted to get it and try it out. But first, Fosi Audio did send this to me and I get to keep this unit. The reason that I accept products from Fosi to review is because they really are offering some high-grade performance with awesome value, but they really do listen to their customers and they really do have great customer service. And they also listen a lot to the people that review their products. I've seen time and time again, and I'm actually currently going through it myself with some of their products, where if there is an issue, it is immediately taken care of. And if you have ideas for future features in products, they actually listen. And this product, the ZP3, is a perfect example of this. I've actually been hopeful that Fosi would send me one to try out, because right around the time that I started to look to get out of an integrated amp system and into something with a dedicated preamplifier and separate amps, I found the P4 from Fosi, and while I was looking that up, I've actually reviewed that on this channel. I saw future specs and Reddit posts with Fosi engineers asking people out there, what do you want in a future Z-line preamplifier? And all the things that they were asking for were all the things that I wanted as well, and this ZP3 has delivered on all of them. But as you will see in this video, I am honest in my assessment because I hope my honesty will usher in new and better products from Fosi. So you will see that there is a very big flaw with this guy, but it does depend on how you look at it. And if you're interested in getting the ZP3 based on watching this review, I'm putting Amazon links in the description, and they are affiliate links with Amazon. And that just means that if you end up using them, I get a small portion of the sale since you saw the review here, but it doesn't add anything for you or charge you anything. And it also allows me to grow this channel, which if you wanted to help out with that also, you could like this video or subscribe to the channel. Now first, let's see what we get out of the box. Fosi tends to keep things pretty minimal with the things that they include with their units, the instructions on how to use it. We also get the remote control. Yes, this unit does have a remote, which is very nice. This is a universal remote, so if you have other Fosi Audio devices, you can use it with those as well. A 12-volt tether cable that you can plug into compatible devices to power them on with the remote with just one click. A power cord, and then the actual unit itself, and it's an all aluminum chassis. And then we have the Fosi orange audio knob here, which we're going to talk more about later. And on the back of the unit here, you can see all of the hookups that it has, including the 2 RCA inputs, and we'll get more into all of this stuff in depth as we go, but this is basically how the unit looks. And on the bottom side of the unit, there are 4 rubber feet, and there's 2 switches that we're going to go over later as well. And this is basically everything that you get out of the box. On the back of the ZP3, we have 2 additional RCA inputs along with the XLR balanced input. Then there is a standard RCA output if you don't want to use the XLR balanced outputs, or if you can't. And there's also a mono sub out. And this is not a small connection that needs an adapter like a 3.5 millimeter, pre-out or something like that. This is a real coaxial sub connection. And what makes this even better is that the unit has a dedicated high pass filter in it. This can control the signal going out to your main speakers, which means you don't need to rely solely on your subwoofer to do that. Or if your subwoofer doesn't have a high pass filter, it can handle this task for you, which means you are hard limiting the low frequencies that are coming out of this and making them go only to your subwoofer. Now the settings for this are basically off, or 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And then there is a limit starting at 80 and another limit starting at 120. My sub has a high pass filter on it, and I've actually tried backing it all the way down to 80 on the sub and then setting the ZP3 to the 80 setting. And I can get a way better sound out of my Wharfdale Lytton speakers which is very cool because they handle low end really well already altogether. So this just makes a more crisp sound coming out of it. And it allows me to be able to turn the volume up a lot more and not put any more stress onto those speakers. Also on the back of the unit is an in and out 12-volt trigger to connect to other devices to control with a remote. And there's also a hard power on and off switch that you do need to click on, but then you'll mostly control the on and off from the front of the unit. And then moving to the front of the unit, we have the main power button that is also the mode selector. And then you hold it down to turn the power on and off, and then you tap it for mode selection. There's also a left and right speaker balance, which is actually very convenient because not a lot of amps or even preamps offer this nowadays. It's something you used to see a lot on integrated amplifiers back in the day, but it's pretty cool because if you have a speaker that maybe is closer to a wall, or your setup is not in a perfect way, maybe it's in a corner or something. Like I have kind of an odd setup here down in my basement. You can use this to, give more power to a speaker that might need it and balance out your sound a little better. There's also tone controls on this. They give you, I think, a plus 12 dB for bass and then a plus 6 dB for treble. It's really nice that they give you the ability to color the sound like that. I probably won't use it. I was not using it on the P4. One thing that I really liked about the P4 as well as this ZP3 is that you can actually hard bypass the tone controls. That's actually setting the tone controls off. And then we come to the volume knob, which really is what makes this go from being an A+ product, in my opinion, to now me kind of just already wanting a Mark II already. The big, beautiful orange or copperish volume knob that's Fosi orange controls the volume, but unlike the P4, which in my opinion, one of the greatest things about the P4, and I even started the video that I made about the P4 showing that it has a fully motorized volume knob that can be controlled with the controller. So when you moved the volume up or down with the remote, the knob itself would move up or down, and you could be across the room and see exactly what the volume was. And more importantly, you could know what the volume was the last time you used the device just by looking at it and seeing, since it was a fully motorized volume knob. However, on the ZP3, they no longer have the fully motorized volume knob, and instead they offer volume memory between modes, which I think is why it can't be a fully motorized volume knob. But this is a huge, huge problem. I can have the volume set to 0 or 6 o'clock, like as you see it here, and then use the remote and turn up the volume, and the volume knob still shows 6 o'clock, which means I have no idea what the volume is. Where this is good is if I have my volume set to different settings, like if I'm using a cassette deck or the Airport Express, or if you're using a CD player and you had to change your volume when you're going from one device to the other, this will remember what those volume settings were when you go back. But the volume knob, the main thing that a preamplifier does for you, is technically lying to you on this device. Now, if you choose to never use the remote control and only use the volume knob, that could work, I guess. But if somebody comes along and changes the volume while it's off, like right now, or like if your cat comes by and moves it, or if you're cleaning the unit or something like that, you cannot trust where this notch is because it's not going to be at the same volume. It really means nothing. I'm not even sure why they put the notch on there because it doesn't really show anything. Fosi, why did you not put the motorized unit from the P4 into this? And it's funny because they literally delivered on every single thing that people wanted in the Reddit post that I was talking about, with people saying, have a hard switch to bypass tone controls, have balanced inputs and outputs, have at least 3 channels, have a remote control. But no one ever said a motorized volume knob, yet they gave us that on the P4, so you would naturally think that they would just put it into the ZP3, but they didn't. And I'm totally baffled, and it really bums me out. But now I have to train myself to only use the remote and keep the volume. I just basically keep this always at 6 o'clock and I never move it or trust it. And so besides that, which admittedly is huge, volume control on a preamplifier, I mean, that's huge. Despite that, this thing sounds and performs absolutely amazing. You're also getting a small little bonus review in this because Fosi also sent me their new XLR cables. They're starting to manufacture their own XLR cables now, and these are actually very nice. They have like an almost gunmetal look to them, and they have metal tips and metal ends, and then the cables themselves are like a soft braided material. They're offering them in 4-foot or 1-foot lengths. I chose the 1-foot length because I'm trying to deal with better cable management in my setup, which we'll probably talk about in a future video because I really suck at cable management. And this is my first time using XLR cables for my home hi-fi stuff. I'm very familiar with using them for pro audio and recording video and whatnot, but this is my first time ever using it on my stereo system. Setting up the ZP3 is extremely easy. Connecting to the V3 mono blocks, which again, you're kind of getting another bonus review here with those two, since I was not able to test those out prior with the XLR hookups, since I didn't have a preamplifier that supported that. Also, I've been using my Zenfono 3 phono stage because it has a balanced connection, and I got this XLR to 4.4 millimeter Pentacon cable on Amazon. And I'm going to link to all of this stuff below. Again, affiliate links. Thank you very much. Fosi does make a very good phono stage, the Box X5, which I've reviewed on this channel also. And it's really great. And I use it actually for my second setup in the house, now that I have the P4 going into that instead of using the ZP3 with the balanced one. But hopefully in the future, Fosi is watching this video and they will make an X6 that has a balanced output coming out of it for their phono stage. That would be awesome, Fosi. The ability to add both of these hooked up with these XLRs in this way has really upgraded my system. And I've seen on some reviews of the V3 mono blocks that there are actually chipsets and components in them that are better on the XLR side versus on the RCA side. So you're getting a better sound out of those when using the XLR inputs. Now, that all being said, my turntable is still starting out with an RCA out. So I don't know if that's, completely ruining everything about not having a fully balanced system. I noticed a huge difference using the XLR connections from this with the V3 mono blocks. Now, maybe that's more on the amplifier side and I'm hearing more of an open sound from the amps themselves. But I also really love the fact that this thing has a built-in high pass filter. I mean, it makes my speakers sound a lot cleaner, and it makes the whole setup just allow me to turn up the volume a lot more on it. And then also being able to have a balanced input. Having a balanced input and the high pass filter, those two things for me outweigh the funky usage of the volume knob. And so I'll just force myself to use the remote on that. Now, that being said, with the remote, there is kind of one small quirky thing. When you go to turn the power on using just the remote, like with the front power button here, it sometimes has a delay, both turning it on and turning it off. It's not like as quick to turn right on like the P4 does, but other than that, it's totally fine. And it is a universal remote, so you can use the remote with both the P4 and the ZP3. You just have to press the different button with it. And I think if you have other Fosi audio units also, it's the same remote for that as well. Another thing to keep in mind, all of Fosi's components can be upgraded, including this new ZP3 with higher grade op amps. However, to replace the op amps in this particular unit, it's actually extremely difficult, and I've not done it. I'm going to link to a video from Fosi showing how to do this, but it looks rather involved. I've actually never upgraded any of the op amps in any of the components that I have from them. I am very interested to do it in the future, and if I get a chance to, I will, because I know that you can get better performance out of some of these things. I'm not sure if the preamplifier, however, in the chain is going to have that much of an upgrade based on the op amps. Tell me below if you know more about how op amps work and if, you know, this would have a better sound to it if I upgraded the op amps, or if I should even bother. I would imagine that like the phono stage or the amplifiers themselves would have a way better upgrade to them since they are more in line with the source. But I don't know. You tell me, and let me know in the comments below if you've upgraded any of the op amps on any of your Fosi audio systems, and if you've noticed a lot of improvements or significant improvements enough to want to break this thing open and go through all the challenge to replace the op amps in this particular unit. Some of the other things that I hook up to this, and one reason why I like having a preamplifier with multiple inputs, I have a cassette player that I use sometimes, but really it's just an extra 3.5 millimeter jack. So it could be anything. It could be a CD player, it could be a cassette player. And then I also primarily use the other RCA input for my Apple Airport Express, which I basically use as like my DAC to be able to stream, you know, Apple AirTunes with it. I basically only use that when I'm using the HomePod minis in my entire house and I want to have music syncing on all floors of my house. And that really only comes into play if I'm like cleaning the house, or if I have a bunch of people over and I don't feel like, you know, running over and changing records all the time. But that's very, very rare. One other thing to note too is that to bypass the tone controls and to get to the high pass filter, it's these switches under here on the bottom of the unit. So depending on how you have this set up in your house, you might not be able to get to the bottom of the unit. I've actually been using the new Fosi acrylic rack that they have to handle all of the hi-fi equipment that they make. And this thing just barely fits inside of it. I mean, it just barely gets in there, like millimeters in there, but it does actually allow you to lift the unit up and get to those switches. So that's kind of cool. I actually have a whole other video coming along in the future reviewing some other like lifestyle products from Fosi. So definitely subscribe to the channel if you're interested in any of that. Overall, the Fosi Audio ZP3 is a perfect companion to the balanced V3 monoblocks, or would go very well with any balanced amplifier. It would be great to have multiple XLR inputs, and maybe Fosi could make an XLR extender to handle that. But before you do anything, please, Fosi, put the motorized volume knob back into this thing, please. It was my favorite feature of the P4, and it would make the ZP3 a complete slam dunk, in my opinion. If you can live without that, which I can, I love this thing, and I will be using it going forward in my primary setup. Again, I am very grateful to Fosi for sending me these devices and allowing me to share them with you, and even making me kind of feel like I'm even part of the process of like having features added to these things. I know that there are some other reviewers out there that have a lot of great relationships with Fosi and have actually come up and made new devices with them. So I think that's really awesome, and it's something that I think is very, very cool about this company. If you did find this video helpful, go check out some of these other videos on the channel. That's one of the best ways that you can help out the channel, is by watching more videos. And I'm gonna go listen to some stuff on my Fosi Audio ZP3. I will see you on the next one.